In the mid-90s, I was fortunate enough to become successful with my music. I got to sell lots of CDs and tour and fill out arenas. But success came at a high price, and I lost everything. I went from sleeping in the nicest hotel rooms to having to sleep in my car in Nashville, Tennessee. I was such at a low place. My career was going nowhere, and my dreams felt like they belonged to someone else. Then one morning I woke up inspired with a thought, a deep conviction to show the world how music can unify all cultures and generations. It was a new beginning, a renewed sense of purpose. It was my declaration to use what I was given to celebrate life. So this is the actual location where he fed 5,000 men. 10,000 years brought joy and seems my soul, my Savior God to thee. My inner battle only ceased when I dug deeper in seeking peace in my personal relationship. The tears I shed were tears of joy. Holy, holy, set me free. Holy, holy, make me see. Holy, holy, bring me to life. Don't get caught in the storm. You're way bigger than that. 'Cause life is beautiful and I feel awesome. Makes me want to shout and say I am beautiful. Life is awesome and I want to celebrate. I feel awesome.
Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heart lines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and you just seen a trailer on the our guest Steph Carse, who's a musician, and talking about his new project, My Shining Hour. Steph, welcome to Revealing the Truth.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Steph, you have had a career which has been award-winning, stage presence, acknowledged around the world, Las Vegas, Nashville, really fighting the fight for making it in a world of gold and silver and platinum records, and trying to put a voice to an inner voice. And your story is really quite a personal and passionate story that's now out in your new DVD, My Shining Hour, your book, My Shining Hour, and your television special, My Shining Hour. And all this has stemmed and grown from an experience you had as a child that has carried with you to bring an awareness to something that you yourself had to wrestle with, that performance Christianity versus authentic Christianity, and hiding behind a mask a suffering soul that was bullied and picked on and tried to get past all of that through the gift of your voice and your talent. Where did all this begin? How did you get where you are, reflect back on where you were, and make the connection to all of that to kind of get a cohesive message out?
All right, so I better be clear now, right?
Yes.
So no, we were a home for mentally challenged kids when I was a kid. We were a home a foster home for these kids. So for 25 years. So obviously, when I got to school and the word got out that our home was a foster home for mentally challenged kids, and of course I got bullied, name calling. You can imagine what it is. So if you're talking about how it started with me, but I think bullying has always been there. Everybody has been bullied at one time. Today it's a whole different story though, because back then, we had a safe place, which was home. Today, there's no safe place for the kids because they're bullied online, and their device follow them home. So there's no safe place. It's a completely different thing today. That's why I wanted to do something about this, because now bullying is the leading cause of suicide among children under 14. And so there's a real epidemic. That's a real problem. Now, going back to my shining hour, the only thing I knew as a kid, I had an identity. My identity resided in the fact that I could sing, and I was known to sing at parties, at gatherings. So singing was my identity. So I knew who I was, and but when I started my singing career professionally, I was extremely green. The only thing I knew is I wanted to sing. So at the time, I had a manager who was the record label, was the producer, was the publisher, the agent. So they made a bunch of money, and the only thing I knew is I was working every day, performing every day. We were selling gold records, platinum records, and sold out arenas with 10,000 people. But I ended up with having nothing at the end because I wasn't really wise about the business part of it. I was extremely green. Let's just put it this way: I went to school, and so having done all that, and being left that I didn't really, even though we sold a lot of records, I was like as broke as you can imagine. I decided to leave everything behind and go to Nashville, Tennessee, and start over. And I was raised in. We were raised Baptist, so the church has always been part of. Accepted Christ when I was 6 years old. But I always say this: I believe personally that I found God outside of the church, and it was at the moment that I was back in Nashville, having done all these concerts and all these accomplishments, and yet finding myself with nothing, where I had to sleep in my car and then living off the dollar menu at Wendy's, and so. That moment though was so important because I believe it's where I found God. For certain people it's different. For me, I needed to be stripped away from a lot of things, and when this happened, that's why we call this project My Shining Hour. 20 some years later, I had to go back to basically my entire career because I wanted to kind of do a documentary of what brought me to do this project. And for me, the darkest hour of my life was my shining hour, because that's when God showed me what He wanted me to do. It took a while for this to come out. This special took about 3.5 years to film. I went to Israel. We filmed in Israel. We went to Africa. We went to different places in the world. I mean, this is a really international project. But that's basically the story in a nutshell of what happened in my career and my walk with God, my relationship with God. Because it's not happen. It hasn't happened overnight. I feel sometimes like I'm one of the Jews that have walked for 40 years. And so.
So it says, after pursuing happiness through achievement and success for most of your life, you realized your shining hour came at the moment you found boldness in your intimacy with God.
Yeah, because you see, as a Christian, I think and I can only speak for myself, but I felt like I was a Christian in the closet because it was not the popular thing to say, I'm a Christian. I wasn't bold enough about my faith. A lot of us today are almost apologizing for being a Christian because we don't want to disturb somebody else's peace, right? And that's not what we're called to do. We're called to be bold about our faith, and that's what God wants us to do. And so it was interesting because in 2013 is when I started producing the My Shining Hour, and I was performing at the time in Las Vegas at the Venetian, and doing my training is in opera, so I was doing all the big opera song, the Bocelli song, at the Venetian. And I really got tired of doing the same thing over and over, and it really wasn't fulfilling for me. And at the time, I went to a church in Nashville, not Nashville, in Vegas, because there are churches in Vegas, believe it or not. A lot of great churches. And then the pastor of the church, it was a growing church, and he invited some of the congregation to go and see the new building that was being built for the extension of the church. And he invited us to write our prayers on the pillar of the foundation. And that's when I said, okay, now I've been saying about being bold. I'm going to be bold. I'm going to declare what I want to do for the Lord. And I want to produce a project that hopefully will be heard, and will travel, and that will declare my faith for the Lord. And so that started then. And then finally, in 2017, we completed everything, and we aired worldwide on Daystar on August 12th, and then throughout the month. And now we're pretty much on a lot of Christian networks. So I'm really, really grateful. I think the boldness was what God expected from me, and that's why He's opening doors.
It's interesting that you would produce a television special, a CD, a book, and a study guide all together, along with the launch of a movement of Why I Count. Mm-hmm. This is an awful lot. This is put you in that overachiever category for the Lord. I'm not only going to be bold, but I'm going to be bold, I'm going to be productive, I'm going to create something that is lasting, enduring. And as I read on StephCarse.com, your vision and your mission, I think that really gives us a great deal of insight. Your vision is to help create a culture of people praying for one another and empower them to fully reach their God-given ability. Let your light shine before men, before people, so that they may see the good things that you do and praise your Father in heaven. So what you're doing is, in everything you do, you want to edify and glorify God.
Well, that's what we're called. I believe that's what we're called to do. We are called in Matthew, we're a light for the world. And we're not here to bring burden, rather be a light to lead them to Christ. We don't want to become the crutch either. So we're just light. We're given certain gift in order to glorify God through them. And, it's not an overachiever thing. It's just like once you make up your mind, once the decision is made, things fall into place. When God is wanting you to do something because you're doing it for the right reasons, then you can accomplish way more than if you're fighting for your own ego.
Well, it's so interesting that when you did what most people who are in the spotlight do, the most difficult thing for somebody who's center stage and in the spotlight is to literally take the spotlight and flip it over and put the spotlight on God and remain with the spotlight on Him and not on you. Your pursuit, your chasing after center stage, top billing, all of this was to teach you who was supposed to be the top billing. When I preach, I actually feel like I'm the opening act for God. That I'm not just His messenger, but I'm the opening act for Him to show up and show off, and all I'm doing is setting the tone and the tenor for Him to be the David Copperfield, for Him to be the headliner, because that's my job. Well, you've been in the spotlight, and now you've chosen to use the spotlight to shine your light as a reflection of His light, that man would see your good works and bring glory to your Father in heaven. And this is where you set aside pride. This is where you set aside ego. This is where you set aside my vision. You set aside my purpose, and you begin to walk in His vision and His purpose for your life. And when I listen to the CD of My Shining Hour, I listen to some songs that I've known for a very long time, but there is something different, something which is uniquely different. It's not it's not your vocality, which is different. It is the spirit in which it's being served up is different. Another rendition of Amazing Grace is just another rendition, another cover of Amazing Grace, unless there's something uniquely different. And I found this to be uniquely different. How did you feel in your song selection, and what made you put my shining hour to music as well as to print?
Well, you know, to go back to what you mentioned earlier, I've been all these places that I know where I can go, and they're not really fulfilling. You know, I think there's more joy and certainly less pressure in doing it for somebody else. And so it's easier and way more fulfilling to do it for God. I think that it removes a lot of pressure also. And then all of a sudden, you know, you realize that you're just an instrument. So I wanted to choose songs that would reflect that. You know, there's a song in particular that I wrote called Healing River on my way to Israel, and that's when we got baptized in the Jordan River. And my favorite line in the song is, I'm finding myself, losing myself in you. And so that really described my journey. I feel more complete, more. It's just I'm doing this for the right reason, and it's energizing. There's no other way to describe it. So every song that I selected over the period of 3 years, you know, it was a journey. I mean, like I said, it didn't happen overnight. And I wanted that's why we traveled the world to film this, wanted to portray and show the beauty. Everything we see out there is so dark and negative, especially if you watch the news, right? So we don't have to look really far to see some negative stuff. And people are now believing that the world is an ugly place to be. And it's not the truth. It's a small minority that the enemy uses to amplify his mission, which is paralyze people. And so I wanted to show the beauty of what's out there, the beauty in people, the beauty in God's nature and in God's gifts, and that we are here to empower each other because we're all given certain gifts. You know, the campaign, the Why I Count, as part of this program, the theme song is called Awesome. And I wrote something in more of a pop category style because I wanted to reach a younger crowd with this song. But it's really based on Psalm 139:14, where it says, I am awesomely made. In the complete Jewish Bible, it's actually saying, I am awesomely made, your works a wonder. And King David ends up by saying, this I know well. So that's why I wrote the song Awesome, and then with this campaign called Why I Count. It's an anti-bullying campaign that actually is a little different than what's out there as far as anti-bullying campaign. We're really about focusing on building character and reminding kids of their identity and who they can be in Christ and who they are in Christ. And so it's a subliminal message, I would say, because obviously we can't say that out loud in the school system. But so we're basically teaching the kid about the physiology of the body. How, for instance, I'll give you some great example. How it takes the largest computer in the world, in Japan, 40 minutes to record 1 second of the brain's activity. The largest, if I show you the picture of the largest, I mean, this is, so the complexity of how God has put us together, and we are so well described in Psalm 139. And I want the kids to remember what's going on inside of them and how we go from one cell to 100 trillion cells, and how there are no cameras in the world that can compare to the human eye, because we have that instant focus. there's nothing, I can throw a ball at you and you'll catch it. Your brain will send signals to your muscles at 300 miles per hour to put you in the right position to catch a ball. No computer can do that without any pre-warning. So what's about the kids today, we want to really empower them about how awesomely they're made. And that's part of the program and part of really the mission of this My Shining Hour, really.
Steph, all of this is you. Your story, your journey, your walk with the Lord, your calling to revisit your youth and the bullying that you saw, growing up around kids with disabilities, given a heart of compassion that comes resoundingly through your music and your message, that you have been given the gift of compassion. Not only have you been given the gift of a great singing voice, but you have compassion. You have the compassion also was the reason why you didn't have the savvy to negotiate a hard contract to make sure you were getting the royalties and the percentages and all these things, was because there was, with that was a certain amount of trust that went along with that.
A lack of knowledge and a little bit of lack of intelligence from my part, I can tell you that.
Right, but it's that heart for people and that heart for others that says, all right, if he says he's going to take care of me, he's going to take care of me. And then it winds up he doesn't take care of me, and then you have to wrestle with that. But if you believe in Romans 8:28, then you do believe that all things work together for good.
I do.
And
I think it needed to happen the way it did.
This is why we had you on our show. We've had Eddie Anders, who's well known throughout many circles in the music world, but wanted to take his own life. We've had on other musicians, Tim Timmons, whose 14-year battle diagnosed 14 years ago with cancer, and yet he's out there talking about a 10,000-minute movement. Musicians often use music as the tool to convey the message. To me, I was inspired that you would pick a song by Robert Zimmerman to include in My Shining Hour. You know him as Bob Dylan. I know him as Robert Zimmerman, a Jewish believer, like myself, a Jewish believer. That you didn't just stick with original music, that your Shining Hour is a compilation of everything coming to a pinnacle where you got to meet God face to face, and how you were transformed and you could not contain it. And so now, using every part of media, television, film, books, study guides, music, conferences, speaking in front of groups, taking that full spectrum to say that I am going to boldly step out and I'm not a performer anymore. I'm not wearing the mask of somebody else's role. I'm now been given the power to walk in my destiny, and here is my story, and I'm going to empower you with it, with this message of why I count, why you count, and why every man, woman, and child deserves to have the same joy, the same encounter, the same level of security that you never had when you were struggling to fight the fight. You didn't have that security. Now you have complete, that peace that passes all understanding. And because of that, it is palpable, and it's something that motivates people to want to grab a hold of it. And if you like music, you're the guy. If you like video, you're the guy. If you like to read a book, you're the guy. If you want to study the Bible, you're the guy. If you want to reach the youth of America and the youth of the world with the message that you count, you're the guy. And so you've reshaped and reformed Steph Carse into this new entity that is hitting us at every one of our sensory levels. That has to be divinely inspired, and it had to have transformed you. What do you find today is so radically different about you than you were yesterday?
It's to let go of oneself, meaning that the biggest challenge is always to keep your thoughts captive, as the Bible teaches us. When we hear our thoughts, we know where they're coming from, and holding them captive and make them surrender to the will of God. It's what I'm learning to do. It's what I'm learning to do more each day. But it's always a wrestle. It's always a battle. But I could say that's the part. To get myself out of my own way was majorly important, and I'm slowly getting there. It's a work in progress. But going back to the why I count, when you see all these young children taking their lives, suicide, leading cause of death in young kids, I always believe that when a life is lost prematurely, we all lose from the gift that was in that person.
Yes.
It's all our responsibility as an adult to really step up and do something about that, because we don't want to let the enemy win. I always tell people, I said, well, we wrestle a lot about a lot of things, but a lot of it is in our minds because the battle has already been won through Christ. We have to remember that, because it's really not our battle. It's a spiritual battle, and it has already been won. So a lot of it has to be with keeping your thoughts captive and finding out where's that coming from. Because sometimes there's some crazy thoughts that are coming up, and you have to really hold them captive. This is what Paul says. Because where's that coming from? Why am I thinking that way? That's not who I'm designed to be. This is not what God. Because one of my favorite scripture has always been from Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you.
Yes.
When you wrestle with stupid thoughts, I keep saying myself, I know the plans I have for you. So it's an easier transition of letting go and letting God.
We're talking with Steph Carse, singer, songwriter, author, producer, mentor, minister, creator of the vision of why I Count, a movement on an anti-bullying awareness campaign. All of that and more in a brand new CD and a 1-hour special that's airing even now called My Shining Hour. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to hear more about the message of Why I Count. Why not bullying, why I count awesome, and why I count kids, and really weigh in on this issue of anti-bullying and why Steph is uniquely qualified to bring this message to our schools and to the youth of the world. We'll be right back. Shalom. I'm the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, Executive Director of Igniting a Nation and host of the daily TV program Revealing the Truth, seen live every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Standard Time at www.ianbn.com, and then replayed throughout the day and night via our website. All of our segments can be seen on the Igniting a Nation YouTube channel. Since our launch in January of this year, we've expanded our global reach to over 54 countries with a social media following of over 125,000. Our commitment is to bring you the most in-depth interviews with authors, subject matter experts, and thought leaders from around the world. We have interviewed guests from Israel, Brazil, England, India, and all across North America. All of our authors are featured on the Books and Media page on our website, www.ianbn.com. www.ianbn.com. There you can find a direct link to the book you want to order, and we receive a small commission directly from Amazon. There is no cost to you for this service. In addition to our daily teachings and interviews, we make available to you the archive of all of the interviews on our YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram channels. Our live program is available from our homepage, and there is never a charge to you for any of this access. We made the decision long ago that we would remain a commercial-free resource that would not be influenced by any pressure from any outside company. There are only two ways that we are able to continue to operate this ministry and provide you with the only live 4-hour daily Christian television talk show program. The first is through your support and tax-deductible contributions to Igniting a Nation. These can be made directly through the donate button on the website or sent through the mail to Igniting a Nation, 2700 Corporate Drive, Suite 120, Birmingham, Alabama, 35242. The other way we support the program is by offering you a unique opportunity to have access to over 10 years worth of teachings on a subscription basis. The teaching archives contains all of my prior sermons, Torah studies, prophecy in the news videos, and much more for the low subscription price of $5 per month. This subscription grants you unlimited access to over 800 hours of content not available elsewhere and is updated weekly with the most current prophecy classes. In addition to 20 hours of original TV programming each weekday, we invite you to join us live every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday evenings for our Prophecy in the News classes. The times and locations are listed on our events page on the website www.ianbn.com. Every day you and I are faced with the challenge of where we will go to hear the truth. We are committed to bring you the only program of its kind that covers the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. We cannot do this without your support. Since we launched on January 5th, 2017, we have aired over 300 individual teachings, interviews, and commentaries not available anywhere else. We are now working side by side with almost every major Christian publishing house to bring you the most in-depth feature interviews possible. Our 1-hour features address every subject that affects the believer's life. We are hearing of salvations from the Middle East, Africa, and all across the United States. Lives are being changed every day, and we have only just begun. Our mission is to become your trusted resource and grant you access to the people, tools, and information you need to grow in your relationship with the Lord. You can help us by liking us on social media and through your financial support. We know you have many choices in who you support, but we are prayerfully asking you to consider helping us keep revealing the truth, true to our calling, to cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth like no other program available. Donate today and help us bring the message to the four corners of the earth. Visit www.ianbn.com and donate, buy a book, or subscribe to our teaching archives. Without you, we do not exist. Shalom and welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and we're talking with Steph Carse, author, songwriter, singer, writer, producer, television special star of My Shining Hour, and the inspiration behind the movement, which is entitled Why, letter I, Count. Why I Count. Steph, welcome back to the program.
Thank you.
Steph, you say Why I Count creates a community of people empowering each other to awaken the amazing gift that lays in each of us. And you show a picture of a young boy standing in front of a school bus carrying a sign that says, "A new way to fight bullying." You grew up in a home of mentally challenged kids and were thrown into that pot because you lived in a home that took care of that. And people are as cruel as they can possibly be in not just innuendo and euphemism, but just by direct outward attack. It's the ugliest side of humanity, and I wish it did not include the body of Christ, but it still does include members of the body of Christ who have no idea of how ugly and unloving and how unlovely they were to the very one that gave his life for them. And so what prompted all of this for you?
Well, you know, recently in the last 10 years, actually, it was published that narcissism has increased by 58%, where empathy have decreased by 40%. So, you know, the selfie years, you know, everybody's taking a selfie, and it's geared towards creating an idol out of ourselves. I mean, a lot of people now have become their own idol in a way, because they're not really in tune with what's going on around them. So they're blinded. A lot of the kids are, you know, they're so caught up. I mean, if Harvard published that 58% narcissism have increased by 58% in the last 10 years, and empathy have decreased by 40%, we need to bring back empathy, and that's part of the equation, and show the kids something else than themselves, right? So this campaign really, it's about building character. We show the complexity of the human body, but at the same time, part of the program is to teach empathy. We award young kids that are doing something as act of kindness for somebody else. It's an award that's been actually handed to me by the World Peace Ambassador at the UN. And so we are awarding, with a legit award, the young children that are doing something for somebody else in spite of their own circumstances. For example, we had this young girl coming from a broken family who actually didn't have a bedroom. She would sleep on the couch. And then she collected all her toys and the things she didn't need to raise money for the veterans. And so these are the kids that we're looking for. We're actually working on producing a television program, a half-hour program, to encourage acts of kindness in the young children. So I don't know if it's answering your question, because I wasn't quite sure where you're going with this, but basically the color of why I count is really to emphasize on empathy and building character.
In this world that we live in, where everything is, as you said, narcissistic, self-definition, and inflicting my will on you, and truly a violence, and I'm a child of the 60s. So we were unified around a cause, and the cause had a name. We had a particular goal: get us out of Vietnam. That was the message, and it was a message that was from every university student, for every youth: get us out of Vietnam. We had clarity of vision. There were no extra side distractions. There was clarity, and we got us out of Vietnam. And when we got us out of Vietnam, then the protests went away. We joined corporate America. We became the baby boomers. We became good citizens, voting citizens. We assimilated into society. We weren't born to be rebellious, but we hated the fact that people were dying for a cause that was not a cause that we should have been in. It was an economic war, not one in which America belonged in. Now we have this idea of everybody has their own identity, and everybody's identity should be protected. But in your own identity, you are also subjected to isolation and separation and division, and all the tools that the enemy uses to take the weakest out of the pack, so that the lion or the lioness can get to the one, and there's nobody there to defend. It's been a tactic of Satan. It's been a tactic in the wild kingdom. It's been a tactic to take the injured and the wounded and then have them devoured by this. And you're bringing a new message to this community of children. How do you reach them differently, and how limited are the resources that are out there that are really addressing this idea of why I count? Because everything I see is I count. Yes, you matter, but you've added the why to it. What is that why?
Well, remember, God, He doesn't choose the most equipped, right? He chooses the one He can equip. And if you look at the disciples that Christ chose, they were really all rejects. You know, according to today's society, we would probably the only one we would have accepted was Judah, because he was well learned and he had money, right? And you know, God chose David, the smallest one, right, out of all his brothers. So I think we all have an important role. You know, for example, as part of the program, we have this big puzzle where it's written, when you complete the puzzle, it says, we are stronger together. And there's a part in the middle that actually ties everything in together. And until that piece is put into the puzzle, you can't quite define what's written, because it's very artsy. And I usually hide this purposely and give it to the youngest or the smallest kid in the class, to show that he has a role. He is important. Without him, there's not the completion of that full picture. And I believe that us as body of Christ, we are all important. We all have different roles. We all have a different calling. You know, no one has the same calling, but we all need each other. What I'm good at, somebody else is not, but what they're good at, I'm not. And you know, I think we ought to work together that way. But I do believe that we need each other, because we all have different gifts. I mean, it says it in 1 Peter 4:10.
When you come across a child that's been bullied, do you draw on some of your own personal feelings? Does it dredge up some of the memories that you have, and now that you have this deep abiding relationship with the Lord, you're able to look at it through more of a biblical lens than before, and you're able to find yourself to be an equipper as opposed to certainly they need counselors, certainly they need psychologists, certainly they need people, pastors and shepherds, but do you find yourself more in the discipleship realm as you're equipping these young people to see why they matter and why they can make a difference?
You see, we have to understand that psychology has proven and shows that the brain of a child, of a teenager, is not fully formed until the age of 25.
Right.
So it looks the same as an adult brain, right? But the frontal part of the brain, the part that's able to rationalize, to make a decision, it's not there. It does not exist. So the brain is only fully operating at 80% compared to an adult brain, which means that every decision that a child makes is fueled by emotions. So they have no way to rationalize anything. So that's why suicide is so huge right now, because they can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. Everything is emotionally fueled. The only way to develop this part is by watching an adult, a parent, or a role model handling their own crisis, and how they will see their loved one as an adult handling their crisis. It's how they will eventually develop that part. But now we have homes that are broken. There's no, parents are working. So we have to be so aware that we can't blame the child if the part of the brain doesn't exist. We have to meet them where they are.
Wow, that makes so much sense.
Yes, because you can't blame them. It's not there. They do not comprehend that part. So we have to become in a sense, been more in tune and really to have empathy. And of course, life as we get older brings us there, right? For instance, we have one time we had a young baby, like a 1 month old baby that we'd bring in the class and have some of the big bully guys just hold the child to feel the presence of a newborn. There's different things that we can do to help with empathy, but we also teach about the power of words. Uh, because we know, as Christians, we know that the tongue has the power, right, to give life or to destroy it, and we see it. Words are very powerful. Now, we're explaining through the program that their own words will affect themselves first. It's kind of a boomerang effect.
Right.
Because you're the source of the words, and they do have impact, and they create and they shape who you become. For instance, a person that says I'm always sick will have a tendency to be more sick than the person. So that it's interesting when we talk about this, then we see young kids come and say, "Oh yeah, my grandma always says she's always sick, but she is always sick." I said, well, I said maybe you can help her and just empower and help her change her words. Or the words will dictate who you become. And because the Bible tells us that the words will have the power to bring life or to destroy it. So, but yeah, looking at it today, when you see injustice, there's so much of it. Then of course your heart is warm to it, and I think it's God that's prepared that in me. That's why I said everything that happened in my life had a purpose, had a reason. Whether when we were home for mentally challenged kids, then I have empathy towards these kids. So everything had a purpose. So I blame God for every good things that happen, and I blame myself for
Right.
all the bad ones.
Yeah, it's funny that blame in a positive form is not usually conveyed that way. Blame is usually in quite a negative way. I want to make sure that we give people ways to contact. It's whyicount.org. That's the letter Y, the letter I, count.org. You can connect with them on Facebook and on Twitter. And I strongly encourage you to do so. I've just done that. This is something that is so important for each and every one of us to make a difference. And if you're not making a difference, if you haven't found that calling, that place where God is saying to you, this is where I want you, right? You've been able to combine, and this is what I just want to applaud what you're doing, is you've taken all of your gifts and you've put them into this basket that says all things work together.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I didn't tell you something that as human, we're always wrestling with decisions sometimes, and sometimes I want to make sure that what I'm hearing is really what God is telling me. That it's not just me convincing myself that this is
Right.
what I'm supposed to do. When we started this program, the My Shining Hour, I'll tell you a little story about this. The first song was Amazing Grace. That was the first music video we filmed. And the last scene of the music video happens, we filmed that, we started with that, and it's about 100 people dressed in robes singing Amazing Grace and on the beach in Daytona at sunrise. And they are shaped like a cross. When the sun hits the cross, it's such a beautiful image. You saw the video at the end. It really, really moving. So that was the last scene, yet the first scene we shot. It was a very complicated shot because the light is if you don't catch the light right away, you lose it. Then it's the next day, and then you have 100 people there, extras that are there. So you want to really be effective. Before the shoot, I said, God, there's a lot of money involved for this producing for the show that I'm producing. I want to make sure that you really want me to do this. I'm asking you for a sign. And then at the moment, I needed a sign to confirm what I was doing. And then this lady shows up just before we start filming. And she says, I have to talk to you. I said, can I talk to you after the scene? Because this is really important. I don't want to. And she said, it really, really is important. I feel like I need to talk to you. I said, well, I'll give you 2 minutes because that's all I got. Right? So I listened to her, and she told me, she said, 30 years ago, she had an abortion. And last night, would have been the 30th anniversary of what would have been her daughter, and she couldn't sleep all night. And as she cried and asked God to give her a sign that she was forgiven, and that I think she wrestled more with the thought that she didn't forgive herself. And so she needed a sign. Regardless, something pulled her out of bed at 4:30 a.m., decided to walk on the beach. Now, mind this, you know what I shared my prayer, my need, and what her prayer was. She walks on the beach, walks, and all of a sudden hears this song, Amazing Grace, out of nowhere in the dark. And as she approaches the music, she sees 100 people that are dressed like angels in the shape of a cross. So, so she got her sign, but so did I. And so it was great that she interrupted me because she's now part of the cross. You can see that lady with a black T-shirt is part of the program. So I think that we just have to be in tune with what God wants us to do, and just be specific. And the more we are specific, the more I think God is going to show us the way.
So what's next for you? Where do we go from here? You have produced a TV special, a brand new CD, written a book, written a study guide, launched a ministry called Why I Count. In your spare time, what is it that you plan to do?
Actually, we're releasing a new album in French Canada this year as well. And then I'm working on a TV show that will be a weekly show for kids. We're going to film parts, different parts of the world. I know we're supposed to, at the end of the year, to go to South Africa to film there, and we're going to go to Haiti as well. And so it's a show about empowering the young generation. It's called, again, Why I Count. It's going to be part of this organization promoting acts of kindness in the new generation to empower them and to promote empathy. So and the rest, I don't know. I don't want to plan too much ahead. I've been wanting to do a movie. I've done one a couple of years ago with Victoria Jackson. I played her son-in-law, and I know you interviewed her. So it was a fun experience. I'm writing something, but I don't know what the Lord has. I will be where He leads me, because I don't want to be anywhere where He's not.
I understand. Well, Why I Count is a 501c3 ministry.
Yeah.
You can contribute to it, and if you are burdened for the youth of the world, and even especially the youth of America who are being bullied. I was bullied as a kid, and I was just a little guy, and there were a lot of bigger people around me that took advantage of that, but it made me stronger in so many ways because of it, that I ultimately outsmarted them, which was the power that God had given me of a better brain than their brawn. And so that's what got me out of the jams that it got me out of. But today, bullying, you have cyberbullying, you have it at every dimension, and it's so steeped in darkness. The shaming that goes on, and the wretched, horrible things that are being said that are driving youth to suicide is appalling. And if you have a burden for that, then I want to address your burden to whyicount.org and help Steph bring this message around the world, help him produce this TV show that your kids can watch and find help, that you can find understanding. Embrace his music. This new work is entitled My Shining Hour. The book and the study that go with it. It's a complete package, as well as the 1-hour television program, which is now showing and available for purchase. You can buy it on iTunes, Apple.com. This is My Shining Hour. All of the music from it is available for download. And I've listened to these songs, and if they don't touch you, then I just challenge you that you can't be touched. Steph Carse, thank you so much for sharing your story with us here on Revealing the Truth.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
God bless you, my friend.
Thank you, Rabbi.
And that brings to an end our live broadcast day, but that doesn't mean we go off the air. We broadcast 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, right here from our studios in Birmingham, Alabama, until we see you back here at 9 a.m. Central Time tomorrow morning, or in this case on Monday morning. We bid you shalom.